All right, ladies and gents, we are on to lesson 7, mod 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out by drawing an area model that represents one whole. And please partition it into thirds and only shade in 1/3. Then you're going to draw a horizontal line across it to cut it into a different type of fraction. So area model, shade 1/3, and then cut a horizontal line. Pause while you do this. Hopefully this is what you got. You created an object, you shaded in 1/3 out of the 3 large pieces, cut it horizontally. What happened to the size of my piece once I cut it? If you said it got smaller, you're right, or it was cut in half, you are correct. So now how many units are in my whole area model? You should have said 6. If you said 6, good for you. So how many units are now selected? Originally I had 1 selected, but once I did the dotted line, how many are selected now? 2, you're right. It went from 1 to 2. Since it went from 1 to 2, what is that called when you go from 1 to 2? If you said doubling, you are correct. Your number did double. I went from 1 whole piece to 2 smaller pieces. So let's go ahead and look at how we can show that with multiplication. I originally had 1/3. Now what I did is I took my 1 and I multiply it by 2 because now I have 2 pieces. What you do to the top, you do to the bottom. So I multiply my 3 times 2, which gives me 1 times 2 is 2, and 3 times 2 is 6. If you want to look at it a little closer, it might look like this. You originally had 1/3. I had 1 piece. I cut it into 2 pieces, so I would say equals 1 times 2. So I had 3 big pieces, and then I cut them in half, so I would have 3 times 2, which gives me 2, 6. It's the same way, just this one's a little bit longer so you can really see it. So this shows us that 1/3 and 2, 6 are truly equal. So one thing I want to review with you, when you double your denominator, your number on the bottom, your number of pieces, it does not make my piece size larger. It makes my piece smaller. In fractions, when you get a larger denominator, then you get a smaller piece. If you had a pizza, I cut it into 2 pieces, they'd be gigantic. But if I all of a sudden cut it into 8 pieces, they'd be a lot smaller. So the more pieces in fractions, the smaller your piece. Go ahead and create another area model. This time I want you to shade in 1/2. Pause. This time I want to make 4 times as many units. I have 1 unit here. I want 4 times. Up here we had 2 times as many units. I had 3, and I went to 6. So if I want to make 4 times, let's go ahead and do that. Let's make 4 times as many units. I cut it so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 groupings, or 4 times. Let's work that out. Take my numerator, which I originally had 1, and I say I wanted it 4 times bigger. Then I take my denominator, which I originally had 2 pieces, and I want it 4 times bigger. 1 times 4 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Do I have 4 eighths over here? Go ahead and count it and see. Pause. If you counted 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you are correct. 4 out of 8. So 4 eighths and 1/2 are equivalent. But what happened when how did I get from the 1 to the 4? I'm going to give you a big word. It's called quadrupled. quadrupled. But it wasn't just the top that quadrupled, the bottom quadrupled also. We know quad means 4. We multiplied each piece times 4. Imagine instead of quadrupling this, timesing it by 4, I wanted it 3 times. I wanted to break it down 3 times. What would that end up being? Well, if you said tripled, you're right. It would triple the amount that's there. Again, do my pieces get bigger or smaller when I cut them? Well, obviously they get smaller. So the more pieces, the smaller they are. All right, next piece. I'm going to actually draw this for you. I'd like you to draw this yourself very quickly. And figure out what the fraction is. And then I want you to figure out figure out a fraction that's equivalent to it. So figure out your fraction and then find something that's equivalent to it. Hint, 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 you're going to have to divide it. Pause. If you need help, find somebody to help you. Pause. All right, hopefully you came up with 1/4 as being what you originally had. I decided to just cut it in half, which means I doubled the amount of pieces I had. I went from 4 pieces to 8 pieces. So since I doubled it, I did 1 times 2. So I had 1, and I cut it into 2 different groups. I had 4 pieces originally, times 2. So I cut it, so now I have twice as many. I ended up with 8. So 1/4 is equivalent to 2/8. They are equivalent. Our units, do they get bigger or smaller? Sure hope you said smaller. These units are smaller than they were before. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to figure out what's equivalent to 1/3 without drawing an area model. You need to check it with an area model, but what's equivalent to 1/3? You'll notice what we did in all of these. What you multiply on top, you multiply on bottom. Top, bottom, top, bottom. So 1/3. 1 times what? 3 times what is going to give me something equivalent. And then draw your area model. Mine will probably be different than yours. Please check yours with mine, and if you want, check with another person as well. Pause while you do this. This is one possibility, one possible way. I had 1/3 to start with. I decided to quadruple mine, so I cut it into 4 sections, which took my 3 original pieces and cut it into 12 pieces. So I did 1 times 4, because I quadrupled it and got 4. 3, I quadrupled my 3 pieces. 3 times 4 is 12. 1/3 and 4/12 are equivalent. You could have done anything. You could have come up with 1 times 2 and 3 times 2. 1 times 3 and 3 times 3. 1 times 12, 3 times 12. Anything as long as it's the same on top as bottom that you're multiplying by, they have to be the same when you're finding equal or equivalent fractions. All right, go ahead and get your problem set and work with a partner. Then you can move on to homework. Good luck.